Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Traumaplicity talk show. My name is Dr. Amanda Helman, author, breakthrough coach, and speaker. And Traumaplicity is trauma plus simplicity, meaning that when we have simple steps, it helps break down complex traumas or hard situations for our brain to feel like, yeah, I can do this one simple step at a time. And so the purpose of this talk show is to encourage all of you out there, if you're going through something, it all matters, whether it be one trauma or many, that you matter and that you can take it one step at a time. So with that said, we usually are on at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays on the Amanda Helman author and speaker Facebook page. And we also have a podcast as well as YouTube. So tonight, I'm really excited to have some great friends I've known for, I don't know, is it 2-3 years? It just all blends together. But essentially, Lou and Randy Estevez, and they are in Texas, but they used to be in Pennsylvania. And amazing people, just really hearts of gold, and to have amazing stories. And they also have some amazing things that are going on in their lives. So I'm just going to allow you, Lou and Randy, to share a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll go on from there.
Great. Well, thanks, Amanda. I'll let you go first.
Well, hi, I'm Randy. This is Lou. Little things about me. I want to say I was brought up in like a Catholic type of upbringing with my family. They just handled things a lot differently. A lot of things were like really swept under the rug when you had problems and issues. It was more like go to church, confess to some guy in a box with a priest, and you were pretty much just told, hey, do some Hail Marys, you're forgiven, but it was never enough. And so now we've been, I want to say, saved for the last 5 years.
Yeah, 5-6 years.
5 or 6 years now that we've been saved. We were actually saved in like a Christian church.
Yeah,
it was a Christian church. Yeah, we've been to so many different ones at this point, and don't really claim any of them. All religions they're great. They all pretty much do the same thing. They actually no, they can I just erase this part? I'm too busy looking at my dog right now. But it's just a lot different now than what it was in my upbringing, in the way that we are experiencing church now in so many different places, from Texas to Pennsylvania, been to North Carolina. Like, it's just so different experiencing it all. And now we're here.
Yeah, I think what Randy was saying is like relationship over religion. I think the biggest thing that has changed in our walk was getting out of like this conformed religiousness that goes on in a lot of churches, and kind of just going out like we've done in the past, where we bring God to the streets. And you're kind of know some of the stuff that we've been through over the years. One of the biggest things is, recently we've started E6 worship, which is the music, the spiritual music, the Christ-centered hip hop music, something that a lot of people, there's even Christian hip hop artists who are considered Christian, but their music doesn't really talk about God or glorify God. And in our music, that's one of our focuses, is to make sure that it's scriptural based, and that it's honoring God, not exalting ourselves through it. And some of our history, like Randy said, I grew up a Catholic as well, and we lived for the world, we lived for ourselves for all of our lives, for our upbringing, until about 5-6 years ago, when we had an event occur in our lives which was really traumatic. But I think all trauma stems from our childhood, to be honest with you. When we work out things in our marriage, and there's no perfect relationship, we still have days that we need to go to our separate corners and cool off, and not allow anger or any type of resentment or anything occur, or not to. We're very cautious now, especially, the Bible says, to be quiet first, not to speak before you speak something incorrectly. So we're always trying to make sure that, we're not using hurtful language in our house, and that we're just loving on each other the best that we can. So that's one of the things that have gotten us through the last couple of years, where we've had this kind of this renaissance in our marriage, because as you know, because you had met us, and I have no problem sharing this, but when I met you, Amanda, you met me in a time where I was really in the wilderness in my life. Like God had put me in a desert. And I think for a lot of people who are going to listen to this show and watch what's going on, I think that people go through that. And I think that's actually really important. Some people really hate the desert, but I think that there's so much blessing that God does through that, because I think that that's where you get your best time with him. You get to really develop your relationship with your Father. So if there's people out there who are in that stage of their walk right now and they feel alone, utilize that time to get close to God. I think that's probably the most important thing when that happens, because the enemy does want to isolate us, and we got to make sure God wins in those moments.
Absolutely. So I know, like, when and I know you have E6 worship and you're talking about your journey, is there a specific part of your trauma story? And I know you sort of alluded to it, like maybe in different ways, but is there one part of your trauma story that you each have that you'd like to highlight?
Well, when I was younger, I didn't grow up with a father or a father figure in our home. So with having a stepdad finally come into the home and him having kids with my mother, I always just felt like the older outsider kid. So that did cause a lot of issues, not only in my household, but taking that to school with me. And then that just caused like a lot of suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts that for me, they pretty much controlled what I did well into middle school and high school and out of high school. And I really dived into that. Like, I took the depression and I made it mine rather than giving it to God and doing, like, now I know to do that when I feel sad and stuff. But when I was that age, you don't think about that. You're more so focused on the right now, why am I not getting what the other kids are getting? Why am I not getting the same attention? So then it just became very like, I want to say, besides traumatic, it just became my life to be that way, to act out because of it. I did start cutting myself very badly in lots of different areas, sometimes to hide it. Sometimes I didn't even care who saw it. I'd walk around with these marks on myself. And that, to me, that was who I was. Like, I was just this person who thought that the world would be better without me. My mom would be better without me. The kids would be better without me. Like, they would be able to have their perfect family. And that's what I thought. It was, of course, all in my head and just a feeling and an emotion, but that emotion pretty much just controlled me. So it wasn't until, gosh, I want to say years ago, like even well into my 20s, did I start thinking about it. I started drinking and partying and doing drugs to try to cope with just the feeling of it and letting that be what controlled me. So then that dictated what I was doing, because it was just, if I was going to try to ignore that sadness feeling, I was just going to try to drink it away or go party it away. And that's what I did for so long. And to me, I thought that it was working, but it really wasn't. There'd be times when I'd be crying to Lou, even when we had started dating. And I was like, in my head and in my feelings, like, I don't know why my family's like this. I don't know why I have to feel this way all the time. So I would still get those attacks, is what I want to call them, because a lot of times it is just an attack. It's an enemy attack on your mind, because I always knew that I was called to better things. I was always, throughout it, I would be the happy person, the one that made everybody laugh. I wanted to be who made people smile, but I wasn't ever making myself smile. In fact, I was making myself more miserable, because I'm like, why can I make everybody else have a great time? But inside, I felt like I was dying every day. And so giving myself to God just completely changed everything. And it wasn't like I said that I'm saved, now I am. It did take a lot of work, a lot of faith, a lot of, reading the Bible and talking to other people who were believers. Like, they do say, like, who you surround yourself is who you are and who you plan yourself to be. You hang around with millionaires, they say that that's what you'll eventually become. But I would hang out with people who were depressed and suicidal and who were partying and drinking all of their problems away. And it was just one big circle of darkness. that we were in. And it wasn't until I started hanging out with people that had this light in them that I felt my light came back. And those feelings went away, that I just, the drinking, the partying, the everything else, to me, it was just, that wasn't even what was needed, because I knew that I was waking up every day and it was just a sense of happiness that I felt, like even just crying out to God in the shower. Like I cry sometimes and it's just a lot different. Like I'll be in the shower and that's my spot to pray. Like is when I feel like I'm washing myself clean and I'm talking to God and I'm in my moment with him, because it's my most intimate moment with him. And for me, that, like, I'll cry sometimes and just knowing like I feel loved now, and I didn't feel that before. Even though that, like, I would get told, hey, Brandy, I love you, I love you, miss you, things like that, to me were just like, whatever, you're just saying it because you have to say it to all of us, and now it's just like, I know I didn't need that father figure when I was younger, because I always had God. I just didn't know him, or wasn't taught about him the way that I know him now. It's just so different, because in that religion, in Catholic religion, they don't teach you that God is your father. It's just so different. Like he's a person who forgives you for your wrongs. The way that they talk about him in church is really scripted, and it's always repetitive, but it's never love. It's always condemning, what not to do. You're going to hell for this, like all these things that they could say, but it's never that love that we needed. And now it's that feeling of wholeness. Even when things aren't okay, they're still okay. Like God has a plan for all of it. Right. And so that's my testimony in it, is that that's what really brought me out, was actually knowing God that way and being introduced to him that way.
Great. And I love how you shared, and thanks for being so vulnerable, Randy, just sharing about your not really having that father figure, going, really not knowing like, what is that to have that love of the father, and then having this cutting, which is a lot of pain and, this abandonment, and probably over the years. And then from that self-harm came to learning how to receive the love from God, which is what you're talking about, the father's heart, and learning that loving yourself, then you can love others. And I think that's an amazing testimony, even sharing about, even when you said about having other people that you could relate to, it almost seems like they were familiar, like they understood where you were, but then you realize, oh, there's people, oh, like, look, they're, they might be going through things, but they're handling it different. So you're attracted to that light and that love, and you're like, there's something different here. So I really love that. And hopefully again, in the audience, a lot of you may relate, because I can relate to a lot of what you shared and some of your journey. So thank you for using your voice and sharing it with everybody. So Lou, want to share a part of your story?
Yeah, definitely. And I think God brought us together for a lot of those same reasons. He definitely doesn't make mistakes, because I had that same upbringing of not feeling worthy. And it wasn't, and I won't even say it was it wasn't anything my parents did, because when I was younger, my parents were together, but there was violence in the home. And I think that I'm pretty sure that I experienced that even in my mom's womb, even subconsciously before I was even born, that my mom was being beaten. And so I'm sure there was that feeling that she was passing on to me, through being incubated, that, she didn't feel great. So I was receiving whatever she was feeling, and then just experiencing it. And when I was 3, I had like a huge moment of trauma where, my mom got just to the point where she couldn't take it anymore. They were both in the military, and my dad on this particular day, he had just gone a little too far, and my mom shot him in the stomach 3 times. And, thank God he's alive to this day, because he's definitely a changed man now. He's also found the Lord in the last couple of years. And, we've been praying for that. We've been praying for our family. So watching someone in their 60s, both my parents now, accepting the Lord, speaking about him openly, that was something we didn't have when they were together. But now that they're not, I'm able to at least have a relationship with the both of them that I didn't have before. I grew up really resenting my family. I rebelled. That's what got me into music and hip hop to begin with, was that it was like my escape from the real world. I was able to create this persona and a character that was nothing like the person that I was. And unfortunately in that, for people that do that, they want to rename themselves or, identify with something that gives them purpose. When it's not focused on the Lord, it just can go so far left. And, I was addicted to drugs. I smoked weed, I drank alcohol, and I was, just not really feeling worthy in my walk. I was a teenager and a guy in his 20s and even early 30s who, didn't really care. I knew who God was. I believed in God. Like Randy was saying, I was taught religion, not relationship. So I only knew about the condemnation aspect of it as opposed to the, the finished work of the cross, which to me is what gets us up every day. And what we've, Randy prays in the shower. And then I'm like I went through a stage of that, but now I do like an hour in the morning, and I just call it my house of prayer. And it's something that I do in the living room. I just turn on the TV, similar to the Mosaic House of Prayer, how they would have music playing. I would just turn on someone who is playing worship music or someone who's doing like a piano with scripture. And I just start declaring the word over my life and over my home and over the city and region and over my loved ones, like just declaring God's truths. Because it's not until we learn his word that we can really have that freedom. I believe that God's word is such a powerful thing. And that's one of the most important things for someone to transform is you really need to have a relationship, one, by praying, but two, by learning his word. Because when you have his word, you could store that in your heart and you can go to it at any point. Like he's given you the authority to trample on snakes and scorpions. He's so loved you, this simple John 3:16, that he so loved you so much that he gave his only son. And once you believe that, and once you own it, and once those become yours, the devil can't snatch that away from you. And so no matter how dark it gets, stand on those truths. And as long as you do that, you'll have freedom.
Amazing. Yeah. And I also love your story. And I know you said that you both had different backgrounds, but can relate similarly to that. And so you had witnessed a lot of, like you said, violence in the home and like not understanding how do we relate, my parents relate and having to go through that and then going to similarly drugs or, like weed and whatnot, and even doing the rap, which again, like you've been able to shift to today. But really being able to express that so people who are out there in the audience, maybe depending where they are in their journey, for both of you, like, where they were in their journey, perhaps not even knowing about God or like knowing of him, but not really knowing. And like that religion, which is a lot of times happens, right? We have that religion versus a relationship and understanding who God is. So I love that you shared what you did, and thank you for being vulnerable. And it's nice to hear just from both of you as a couple to share about like your background. And you also shared about, for both of you did, about your prayer time and what that means to you, and about the word and how you've been transforming. So I know those are some simple steps that you've been taking over the years, but do you have any other steps that you would want to share with the audience? Like anything else that you did during your healing journey and continue to do that has helped you?
I did change the music that I listened to a lot, because I would listen to like whatever was playing on the radio, rap, hip hop, a lot of metal music also. And a lot of times it's not the best, which I thought at the time it was before. And, I would just drown myself out in listening to music. But a lot of the stuff that we listen to is just putting us right back into like the same depressed feeling, because it talks about, what you're feeling, but it doesn't talk about getting over it and overcoming it. So listening to that secular music before and then changing it to like, well, what do you listen to now? It's just Christian music. Even sometimes just even music without any words to it, just very soft, like melodic music is just so different of a feeling now. And that did help a lot, because I was that music person. I would shut everybody else out in the world, put my headphones in, stay in my room, and I didn't want to see anybody, of course. And changing that helped, because before it, I would just put that on and I would drown myself in it while I'd be crying and not feeling any better. it was just feeling just as bad as I did when I first started putting it on. And then changing that, it does give me like that sense of like, I do sometimes feel like I'm crying in it while I'm singing and screaming at the top of my lungs, but it's like this freeing feeling of like love, and like I've overcome everything. So I mean, it does give you like that sense of comfort that is needed in those types of situations, rather than just listening to whatever's on the radio, changing that, and that helped a lot also.
That's great. Yeah. So change of the music, we still might have some of the release, but looks different. And, the words you're hearing, the frequencies that you're hearing, and the sounds are all very different, which can impact us. So thank you for sharing, Randy. And Lou, do you have another helpful strategy that may be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, besides the music change, which I think has in our lives, like I've seen that. I can even listen now that, we're such avid prayers and worshipers, that we can identify when we hear a song that's secular. We're like, I can find God in some of it, and then there's certain things I'll be like, I think we just need to change that now, and but on my journey, like I've taken just like steps to, I think like my thing is to forgive. I think for me to have self-healing in every aspect, in every relationship, whether it's, your parents, your spouse, or even previous relationships that you've had, or business partners. I've experienced it in so many different or platforms and different relationships, and I see God doing such mighty stuff through that. And I actually started praying that recently, that I just want you to heal me, God, and heal all the relationships. Anything that I have against someone that I'm not even identifying, address it. And God has. I've had people reach out to me that I haven't spoken to in 10 years, just to say, hey, I see what you're doing. I love that you're just waving your Jesus flag. Keep doing that. And, and then getting reconciliation. I just think now in all areas, because for some people there are going to be oppressors that you can't have communication with, but you still need to forgive them. I think that forgiveness in your heart is so valuable. It's like kingdom currency, that if you could just let things go and give them to Jesus, that you can receive so much more from that in the long run. And lately for me, the biggest thing is just realizing my worth. And Randy and I have been talking about that topic over the past week, is feeling worthy. There's such importance in realizing how worthy you are. And the word says that he thinks about, like, his thoughts for each one of us are like hundreds of millions, quadrillion, billion. And to think of it, like, God thinks about me or you or Randy like that much, or you watching, like God thinks about you that much, that he loves you so much that his thoughts for you are like grains of sand in the desert. Like you can't even measure it. But you need to receive that. It's so important to receive that truth, that he is always thinking about you. He's always got a plan for you, that no matter where you're at, even if you're in a desert or if you're on a mountaintop, he's got a plan for you, and just let him lead you. Because sometimes, like I've noticed, deserts are easy to go to God because you have nothing but God. But sometimes when we're on a mountaintop, we spend too much time appreciating the view instead of getting the real perspective, because that's why he brings us to a mountaintop, is to have perspective. So we got to make sure we're not just enjoying the view, although you want to enjoy some, but also know what you're supposed to be learning in that season, because there's a lot that you can get from that. And I've been praying for that with God, is just wisdom, knowledge, understanding, to be able to, because right now I feel we're in a season of fruitfulness, and we're on a mountaintop. We've had some really good things happening, but I don't want to miss what God has for me in that, because there's something there as well.
Oh, that's great. And I love that. So just thinking about, the different shifts that you've had, and even just when you're in whether, I like what you said at the end too, desert, or if you're in the desert, you're clinging to the Lord, And then even when you're celebrating those victories and when you are at a higher perspective, what is God wanting to show? What is God wanting to show, all of us during that time? And also just being able, I love how you said about, okay, like, God, where might there be offense, or where might there be areas where we didn't forgive? And I always say, like, sometimes there's that journey of forgiveness, because sometimes we don't even know, we like made the heart will to do it, and then there's still emotions there, and then God's just revealing it. And I loved about reconciliation where people are reaching out, just amazing. Like, as we learn the prayers and as God, like, we seek him, he can show us how to go through that. So I love that journey. So again, those are different steps. And for those of you who are believers or not, just kind of hearing the different processes that are going on through that, or depending what you grew up in, or maybe like one of these things, or a lot of it resonates to those of you who are listening, and being able to hear about those journeys. So Lou and Randy, I appreciate having you on. So 4 different people in the audience, whether they're in the beginning of their journey of going through some of their trauma, perhaps in the middle, there's a lot of times messiness with it. It's like I always say, it's like a bunch of loops to go through the healing journey. And sometimes we feel like we're going backwards, but really not. We're just dealing with some things that go forward. But what would be one word or phrase of encouragement that you each have for the people in the audience?
I would say just keep loving people, because that's really how in the end you end up loving yourself more. I feel like just if you give as much as you can, then it also gives you a sense of happiness. And just by doing that, know that God loves you. He's always going to be there for you. He knows every step that you're going in, and you're never alone. As much as we may feel alone sometimes, we're not alone. All it takes is one prayer, a mustard seed of faith, and just praying out loud and crying to him if you need to feel that, and knowing that he hears you and he's going to get you through it. And if God is getting you through it, it's because he knows he has something beautiful for you at the end. That's definitely going to pull you out of that situation and out of that feeling.
I love that. So just really focusing on love, loving each other. And God is really love. So that's really beautiful, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. Thanks, Randy. And then Lou?
I'm going to keep it simple. One word: breakthrough. We got to be willing to just break through. And like you were mentioning about feeling like held back, because I feel like that's for somebody that's watching this. If you feel like you're in a delay season or you're being held back, I always just think of, the archer, of how, when the arrow's going to shoot out, consider yourself an arrow, and he's holding you back because he's about to project you into some new, great, amazing thing. And I'm just declaring that for whoever that resonates with this evening.
Yeah, and that's great. I love it. Breakthrough and love, right? And they go hand in hand. And so, so if some of you feeling that way, and the great thing is that I remember, and I'm just adding it on because I know you're talking a lot about like the different seasons. And I remember the one time I woke up, God always wakes like in the middle of the night or in the morning, like, cause I'm just like, I'm relaxed. And I remember he said to me, "You're not behind." And it was like in a season where I felt like everything, I've been waiting on promises. And when he said that, it broke something in me where I'm like, I'm with him. And, he redeems time. And so like, when you're feeling like there's all these promises that are not fulfilled, or, disappointments, there was something that broke in me when he told me, "You're not behind. You might think that you messed up. You might think there's delays. You might think XYZ, but he's a God that he keeps his word, and nothing's too hard for him." So it just reminded me from both of you what you're saying, like that love and that breakthrough. And, that even as I speak that over myself and all of us that are on here, that we're not behind. He has us, and he is in and out of time. And so, so hopefully as you're watching this, that'll be encouraging. So I thank you, Lou and Randy, for being on here and for sharing your stories and for encouraging the audience. And audience, we love you. You're loved, you're matter, you're valuable at all times. And so if you watch this, we would love to hear some of your questions or comments. You can leave them and I'll certainly let Lou and Randy know, or they can answer that. And before we end, and I just talk about when we do the show again, do you want to just share where you can find E6 Worship or some of the things you're doing just so they can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're on all social media. We're on every streaming platform, and it's not hard to find. You just put E6 Worship in and you'll get any of our landing pages.
All right, excellent. So there you are. So I'll make sure I put that in the comments for those of you who watch it. With that said, thank you all for tuning in, and know that Traumaplicity is every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And depending on the podcast and YouTube, you might be listening at a different time. So thank you all. Thank you, Lou and Randy, and everybody. I hope you have a great night. Take care.
Take care.
Yes, thank you for having us. Bye.
Yeah.
God bless you.